I'm Duncan McLeod, and this is the TechCentral Show, brought to you today by MTN Business. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/TechCentral. Now, Paystack. They're a Nigerian fintech with continental ambitions. The business was acquired by Stripe, the Irish-American fintech, started by the Collison brothers in 2020, and that deal was worth a phenomenal $200 million. I'm joined now in the TechCentral studio by Joel Bronkowski. Am I pronouncing your name correctly, Joel?
Yeah. I've since learned it's Bronkowski, but I go by Bronkowski.
Bronkowski, I suppose it would be, yes. Is that a Polish name?
It's a Polish name.
Polish,
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Joel, you are country lead in South Africa for Paystack. Welcome to the studio. Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
How long have you been with Paystack now?
It's about to be 4 years next month.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long has Paystack been in the South African market for?
So we went live May 2021, so just over 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, we had about a 6-month public beta and a shorter private beta before that.
So you were prepping for the launch prior to that?
Exactly, yeah. Just getting whoever would trust us, to test out payments and get familiar with our platform and get some feedback.
Great.
Yeah.
And Paystack is based in, with South African operation is based in Cape Town.
Yeah, we have an office in Cape Town. Most of the team is not by plan, but based down there. We do have a few stacks, as we call ourselves, in Joburg and other spots in the country. But yeah, there seems to be a congregation around the Western Cape for some reason.
Okay. A lot of fintech startups in that part of the world.
Yeah.
So you're in good company.
That's right.
Now, you're very clearly, judging by your accent, not originally from South Africa. You're an American national. How long have you been in the country for?
The better part of 15 years. So I came in, actually it'll be 16 years. 2007, wow. I came for a gap year to do volunteer work, and yeah, there's a long story there, but met a local person, got married, studied here a bit, and then I really found my career. I spent some of my early 20s sort of figuring out what I want to do. Do I want to save the world? Through launching an online store, I got a chance to work for WooCommerce, and that was kind of the start of my journey into tech and payments.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed how someone at a young age goes and lives in another country. Where in America did you grow up?
So I'm from just north of Los Angeles originally.
All right.
So yeah, it's almost about as far as you can get from
over the side of the world. I know this well from traveling to San Francisco over the years. Yeah.
There's no easy way to get there.
There isn't.
Yeah.
Okay. So why South Africa? What brought you here specifically?
Yeah. So the short version is I in 2004 I worked at a summer camp as you do when you're a teenager, and I met a group of South Africans that were at the camp and just became friends with them and heard a lot about. They also ran kind of like leadership camps in Cape Town, and I just became friends with them and was really intrigued by what they had to say about South Africa and the challenges and opportunities and all of that. And I decided to go for a month in 2004 and over December holiday, and it was just, I won't go into the nitty gritty details, but a couple weeks of running camps for different communities in Cape Town, and then we spent a week and a half in Limpopo in a rural village, building a church. I just was kind of like blown away by the diversity, the challenges, but also some familiarity with some of the people I met. And it just kind of opened my eyes to the world. I hadn't traveled a whole lot before that.
Right.
So I was just quite taken with South Africa. I came home and was like a big South Africa fanboy. Any opportunity I had to tell people about it, I would work it into a conversation. But that was the start of it. And then
you came back,
finished university and came back. Yeah.
Okay. So you must have loved it. So you've been in Cape Town that whole time, have you?
Yeah. I studied in Stellenbosch and lived there for a few years, not far from Cape Town. Yeah. Okay. But otherwise, Cape Town, yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Now, Paystack, they're headquartered in Lagos.
That's right.
Nigeria. It's a Nigerian company. Its founders, you can probably pronounce the names better than me, Shola, Akinlade.
Yeah.
And Ezra Olubi.
Olubi, that's right. You got it.
They're the founders of this business. Tell me a bit about Paystack and its origins. And
yeah. So the short version is we're a payments platform helping businesses of all sizes collect and distribute funds. And that's kind of, there's many iterations to that, and can get into that, changes, different opportunities within that. But the company really started, the origins of it are actually quite similar to Stripe. If you listen to Patrick talk about Stripe, it sounds a lot like the way Shola and Ezra would talk about starting Paystack. They were both working in the banking industry. They had studied together, both developers, and just realized it's way too difficult to start with payments. So if in those times in Nigeria, if you wanted to collect payments, you literally needed to go to a bank and make a case for it and fill out paperwork and sign your life away. And there was costs involved with that. And they had seen what Stripe had done and maybe a few other companies globally, just making it really easy for people to accept payments, and decided to build Paystack. So the story, they've got some great stories of like how much money they spent to get the first checkout designed and just the way that they went about iterating on it and testing it. But ultimately they built a very basic version of Paystack, a beautiful checkout, easy for developers to build payments into whatever they're building. And I mean, the rest is history. We can get into it. I think it was a few months after their having built Paystack that they got into Y Combinator, and that kind of was the next, the kind of the next step on their journey to where we are now. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about the Y Combinator. Was that an investment into Paystack?
So Y Combinator's a very famous, maybe the most famous, some would say, accelerator in San Francisco. They do. Forgive me for not knowing the details of this, but I do believe all startups that go into their accelerator, they do often take equity stake in those companies. But I think it's more about getting them ready to be a high growth startup and sort of creating opportunities for them to get funding and learn how to run a startup, right? And you're in a cohort with other startups, and it just gives you a chance to sort of learn from your peers.
Yeah.
So it was through that that Shola had a chance meeting with Patrick from Stripe, and so later that led to Stripe being part of our Series A, which was pretty cool. A very strong signal to Africa. That companies like Stripe are actually really interested in what's happening here.
So when Joel, when did this deal with Stripe happen?
It was I believe it was 2020. I believe it was November of 2020, or maybe late October.
Fairly recent. Okay.
Yeah, it was quite recent.
And is the idea eventually that that this becomes Stripe Africa, or does Paystack keep its name?
Yeah, I think that's still TBD. Okay. Stripe's really let us continue with our ambitions and like our journey to build deep, Yeah.
I guess the markets in which Paystack operates are very, very different to the markets in which Stripe has traditionally
operated. Exactly. So Stripe doesn't operate in Africa yet, but they certainly care about Africa, hence the big investment in Paystack. Sure. But it's not that easy to just become Stripe or, everything that we've built. If you think about all the different payment methods in different markets, it's not that easy, but there's definitely room for us to really. Well, there already has been a lot of collaboration, right? Sharing of knowledge and leads, and even some Stripes, as they call themselves, coming over to Paystack to work for us. So a lot to learn, and I mean, our products are very similar, our APIs are very similar. So we'll see what happens with the branding, but I think it's been quite for being acquired. It's been a really cool journey to just be able to continue as Paystack with our ambitions and be able to learn from Stripe and have them helping us,
Okay. So tell me how a business today would typically make use of
Paystack.
Of Paystack, yeah.
Yeah. So it really depends on the type of business, but I would say from very, very basic users that are just looking for something simple, like think of MSMEs, the hundreds of thousands of them.
It's always a business
in South Africa. It's always a business, or it can be an individual, sole proprietor, but still business intentions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So for those users, we have actually some really basic but powerful tools built into Paystack. So you can create a payment page to collect, let's say, donations or whatever, or you can even create a payment page to start a subscription. Say you're a tennis club or something.
Okay, so you can collect all those payments. It's a full e-commerce integrated
built
solution.
into Paystack. Yeah, and then we actually have a product called Storefronts. That's a very simple and elegant e-commerce solution for someone who's getting started. Right. So at the very start of the spectrum of business growth, people that are just like trying to figure things out, We're free to start. We have tools for them to use. And then I think as you go up, you have more complicated use cases. You have bigger companies trying to figure out their billing and trying to find the balance of cards versus other kinds of payment methods, debit orders and those kinds of things. And you have developers who are sometimes trying to solve very unique challenges, like maybe a marketplace being built. We have an API called our Split Payments API where someone can pay and we actually automatically settle the sub-merchant, right? So there's lots of different use cases. And if we looked at even just different industries, they care about very different things when it comes to payments. But I think one thing that sets us apart in South Africa is just that we really, there's a lot of competition in the market. And like some players that have actually helped build a lot of trust with payments. So you won't catch me saying bad things about our competition, but it is quite fragmented in terms of solutions that are made for kind of small businesses and small merchants, and then those that actually just focus on enterprise, right? So I think we kind of sit in a place where we can cater from getting started to like growing with us, right? Obviously, saying that and actually doing it and winning that business is another challenge. Yeah. But that's in Nigeria, we've been on that path, and in South Africa, we're also we're getting there. So.
Is the full feature set available here in South Africa?
So in terms of our APIs, most of it, yes. There's a few nuances to that. So in Nigeria, we recently launched terminals product for card payments in person, right? So we haven't yet done that in South Africa. So there's a few instances where it's not, but otherwise everything else is available in South Africa. Yeah.
South Africa obviously has a much better developed banking system than Nigeria. and I guess some of the things that Paystack's founders were solving for were related to the fact that the financial services ecosystem in Nigeria is probably not as well developed as it is in other markets around the world.
Yeah.
Have you found that you've had to come to market in South Africa perhaps a little bit differently to the way Paystack has approached the Nigerian market, given that our financial services sector is already well advanced?
Yeah. And I think it's not just how advanced the sector is, and because some of that is challenging, like regulations and things like that, or even costs are different in South Africa, very different than Nigeria. I think the competition is a hard one to build trust. And it's one thing to get someone that's new to payments to start with us. It's another thing to get someone to switch from someone who's been around for a long time to an incumbent, provider. So I think we've definitely found some really good entry points. One being with developers. I mentioned that already. I think some of our competitors that cater for developers aren't free to use, or you can't access the API docs right away, or you can't sign up for an account and get started right away. Right. There's some friction there. I think that's been really great. Like if developers love your solution, as you know, some of those developers are CTOs or at bigger businesses, and they can advocate for our solution as well. So I think that's been one. The e-commerce space is one I'm quite passionate about, having come from Shopify. I think what we've done there that's been really helpful is we've built integrations that are solving some challenges. So like our Shopify integration, for example, allows merchants to process their refunds from Shopify. Our competitors aren't necessarily doing that. So we've kind of picked a few spots where we can just be a bit better. Or in that use case, we've also brought some technologies through our integrations into the market that other folks don't have. So like recently we announced we're working with a platform called Commerce7 that serves wineries. And so and they've chosen us to be their payment partner. And so through that relationship, we kind of can win in that space. So I think that would be another one. And then the last one would be startups. I think we really care a lot about startups and just helping support them, and have startups program called Catalyst to actually provide free processing and try to come alongside them with funding and things like that. So those are the three I would call out as where we've done well, but there's still a lot of room for us to grow and go up market and just win more of the South African market. Yeah.
How many markets are you operating in now across Africa?
Yeah. So we are in 4 markets now. Yeah. So Nigeria and Ghana are Nigeria obviously being the first one. Ghana, I think that one launched also in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And then South Africa, 2021, and now Kenya. So we boots on the ground and operating out of Kenya, and ambitions and folks on the ground to set up operations in North Africa and Francophone Africa. So that's going to be exciting new frontiers for us to kind of see if we can solve, payments in Africa challenge. I think that's one thing we're really passionate about. Like, we don't see enough. It's not easy enough for multinationals to enter Africa. Like, even now, if they come, they can integrate with Paystack, one integration.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot more work Paystack and other companies have to do. They have to register bank accounts and register companies, and it's just not easy. So one of our big ambitions is just like, how do we make it easier to do business across Africa? How do we make it easier for South African businesses to enter other African markets, or at least offer their products or services, to other African consumers? Yeah.
And how closely do you work with your clients? I mean, if one of your clients wants to do a big e-commerce integration, for example, would you then make consulting services available, or is it just a case of, well, here's our API, here's our technology, integrate it, and you do the work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say we work really close with our clients. As we scale, obviously we have to look at the, like, we can't be everywhere with, with thousands of merchants, but But
I imagine to a large extent you can automate a lot of this stuff. And
sure.
You provide instructions on the website. I imagine this is how you go about doing this, and here's the documentation for this.
So a couple of things there. We really like when we have calls with merchants. We don't jump into sales. It's like we really want to understand what their challenges are, what's working, what's not. And so we do have a developer relations team that can come alongside if there's, kind of a need on the development side, consulting them. In some cases, we will build things for clients if the opportunity justifies it. And we have made the investment into having local South African team members on the service side. So when merchants are onboarded, we have key accounts in South Africa. We have our customer support in South Africa. So we've kind of gone through that process of trying to build deep and show the South African market that we care about them, and we're going to, like, we want to know our merchants. When we went and met with a bunch of merchants, some of them said they've never met their payment providers. It's like, no, we care about you. We want to have that relationship. More recently, last week, we launched what's called a service partner directory. And our aim there is to find folks that deliver different services, whether it's marketing, development, various development languages, or they specialize with different technologies. When our merchants have a need, to be able to point them to those trusted service providers. So that's just another way we can kind of create those relationships that help in both directions. They can also send us business, and we can support them. Yeah.
And how do you see the fintech ecosystem developing both here in South Africa and on the rest of the continent? There's a lot of activity going on among startups. I presume at some point, and I guess some banks are already doing it, is fighting back and saying we've got solutions in this space too. Do you see the traditional banks as competitors or long-term partners to fintech startups?
That's an interesting one. So I've seen, in South Africa, I can speak more to that, a lot of really positive movement in the fintech space. So recently there's a Fintech Association of South Africa that launched, and just, I think, just qualitatively looking at sort of post-COVID, just a lot more activity, community activity. I know this year has been a hard one. So I do think the funding hasn't been there this year, which stifles some of the fintech's launches, or, we've seen a few startups that have struggled to survive in this environment. So, but I do think it's thriving. In Nigeria, there's a lot of interesting things happening, and sometimes we're caught in a place where it's like, we want to be the infrastructure layer, but we also have a lot of our merchants, that have a lot of requests for different things. And so we have to really think about, what are we going to build, and what are we going to build versus, like, are we going to be the infrastructure that helps the other fintechs? And so that's a challenge. In terms of the banks, it is an interesting one. I think to date, from what I've seen, it's more of a partnership. There is a little bit of tension with the way things are set up, and banks going and acquiring their own business. And sometimes fitting into that is tricky. But for the most part, I do think they look to the payment service providers to bring the business. I think some of the banks have spun up different, tech events or startups and are trying to kind of inch into that space. But I think it's tough for the big banks to do that. Like some of the neobanks, I think they're more agile and more like interesting. And like, even when we speak to them, it feels like they're more like Paystack, and we can like move quickly. We could do things, so that's exciting. But I don't feel much concern about the competitive, like, I guess the thing with payments is like, there's a lot of problems to be solved and we just need to like talk to more people and solve them. It's not like buying a car where everyone's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then Joel, just before I let you go, Nigeria is an interesting country. Have you had opportunity to spend time there?
Yeah, I have. So once upon a time, I was going every quarter to see the team. And when I started, I spent about a month there.
Just give us your thoughts on Nigeria and its potential as a technology powerhouse in Africa. I mean, we see some of these unicorn startups coming out of Lagos and other cities and out of Nigeria more broadly.
Yeah.
How sustainable is it? Is there a powerful tech economy potentially being built in Nigeria? What are your thoughts on the country?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking that. So one of the reasons I joined Paystack, I mean, aside from just having met Shola and kind of feeling his excitement about the continent, I think it's infectious. If you meet most people from Paystack, they're just like, man, Shola is a great leader, But I kind of wanted, I spent a lot of my life now assimilating and like living in South Africa. And
you've got a unique perspective because you're an American coming from an outside perspective on Africa. And exactly. I'm asking you about another country where you haven't lived. But so not really a fair question.
No, but it's fine. Yeah. I think, so part of why I joined also was just like, I want more exposure to Africa.
Sure.
And Nigeria is an interesting place. Like I knew Lagos was a busy city, but I didn't really know much else. I think what's happened there is incredible, like the number of startups. And it's for Paystack, like we've got to be at the center of that because launching in 2016, if we just look at what's happened since then, we were the first Nigerian startup to get into YC. Now, if you look at the cohorts, there's many of them, right? There's like dozens of them. So I think we'd like to think we've played a big part in that, but I can just say like my Nigerian colleagues are we've assembled like some of the most incredibly talented, hardworking people, and very passionate about solving challenges in their country and in the continent. I think, people talk about the Nigerian hustle and stuff like this. It's really true and it's really infectious. And I think in South Africa, when we've sold Paystack here, when we've talked to people, some people get that and some people don't. I think some people think like there's like this stigma or bias, like, oh, this thing is built somewhere else. But like the tech coming out of Nigeria is like actually in a lot of ways like
why is it happening?
I don't. That's a good question. I think
it's a huge market.
I think the thing is Nigeria has like a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
I think. Even in the news in the last few months, there's been a lot of changes and things that are hard for Nigerians to handle. But I think like at the core of the young, like I think part of it is there's like a young generation that's just like, and they're even on like Twitter and different places, like they kind of congregate and share ideas and are excited about each other. So I think there's just a lot of activity around people building things to actually make Nigeria a better place. And that just happened in a relatively short period of time. Right. So there's just a lot of excitement and activity there. I wish I could spend more of my job actually keeping up to date with it because like we have tons of merchants doing all kinds of interesting things, some of which would probably be really cool to have in South Africa. But my head's pretty head down in South Africa.
Sure.
But I am excited, Duncan, to like one thing I really hope Paystack can do because we get a lot of South African startups that are interested in Nigeria. Maybe partly because for them to get funding, they need to prove they can expand to new markets. But I think it's also just a big market in Africa. It's a huge market.
170 million people or something.
So I really hope, within Paystack and our company and our team, we've had a lot of cross exposure between Nigeria and South Africa, which has been very enriching for everyone. But I really hope we can bring that to more of our merchants, in both directions. bringing some South African startups, even if it's not like just launching them in Nigeria, like exposure and just, I just think there's more that could be done there. You don't see enough South African startups entering other African markets. And I think Paystack wants to play a big part in that.
Yeah. Yeah, there seems to be the relationship between African countries seems to be a bit disjointed when it comes to the startup ecosystem.
Yeah.
I guess large distances don't help. I mean, Nigeria is a very long way away from South Africa.
It really is, yeah.
Which I guess, it's a vast continent, which I guess makes that sort of collaboration more difficult. But with technology, anything's possible.
Yep.
If people want to know more about Paystack, what is the website?
It's paystack.com. Yeah.
Paystack.com. Easy enough.
Yeah.
Great conversation. Joel Bronkowski or Bronkowski is country leader for Paystack in South Africa. Thanks for an insightful conversation and talking to TechCentral today. Much appreciated.
Thanks so much, Duncan.
Thank you.
Yeah.